Welcome back to the Two Peas on the Pod podcast. It has been a while. We've recorded, how many episodes are we recording now? 2 episode 2s. This will be our third episode 2, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we have ran into a multitude of problems on the front of editing and just trying to figure stuff out. We finally got all those problems squared away, hopefully. If something else happens, we apologize, but we should be looking at a schedule where we're going to be uploading a new podcast episode every Sunday. So please tune into those. We hope you guys keep enjoying them with that. Then without further ado, let's keep jumping back in. Once again, I'm Patrick. I'm here with Pease. Pease, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for asking, Patrick.
The third time's the charm for episode 2. I still struggled on the first 2 episodes to make the first two episodes to make sure I was asking how you're doing. But we'll jump right into what we have going on here. First up, we have Aroldis Chapman to the Pirates, 1 year, $10.5 million. I don't know if this really moves a needle for me. Chapman wasn't very good towards the end of last year. He had a good start to the year with the Royals, I thought. When he went to Texas, he kind of blew up, and Bruce Bochy kept throwing him in save situations and almost leaving him out to dry a little bit. But Bochy trusted him and kept throwing him out there. I don't know how many save situations that Chapman's going to get with the Pirates. However, I like them to be able to go out and get him and hopefully do what the Royals did last year, which is be able to flip him at the deadline. What do you think?
No, I agree. Actually, Chapman as a whole and in general, a lot of these bad teams, what I like to see is that they are starting to kind of work free agency a little bit. There was Alex Wood with the A's. The Royals have obviously kind of stacked up a lot of middling talent over this offseason. And I think this is really smart where if you're willing to spend your money to, try to basically flip some pieces at the deadline to get more prospects, that's exactly what Chapman's going to do. If he's going to be pitching high leverage situations, the Pirates are slowly starting to develop some pitching. Like they've got a pretty decent development program going on their last couple of years. I know like David Bednar was a huge piece for them that came out of nowhere, but I think this is a good move for them, and hopefully Chapman figures it out and gets flipped to a team at the deadline.
Yeah, I think it's also a great opportunity for Chapman. He knew he wasn't going to get $10.5 million if he wants to go to a contender. He goes to a place in Pittsburgh where he will have the opportunity to prove himself. He will hopefully show the Pirates show the MLB he can pitch in high leverage situations again. This allows him to be able to go then play for a contender for $10.5 million. I think more of these older free agents are going to start doing something like this as well, where if you bet on yourself, you think you can still do it. Unless the Pirates are contending at the deadline, which, I think they have a sneaky chance to at least be competitive in the NL Central this year. I don't think they're going to go out and win it, but I think they're going to win a good amount of games and at least kind of be in that mix. But I still think they're going to offload Chapman. So hopefully he'll be able to throw in a lot of those high leverage situations for them, and then, hopefully get flipped to a contender come a little bit closer to the deadline. Next, we have Carlos Santana to the Twins in the AL Central. This is right after they traded Jorge Polanco to the Mariners, which the Mariners, Jerry DePito if he's not making trades in the offseason, that guy doesn't know what to do. All he does is make trades. Seems like he's playing MLB The Show. We talked about that. All the time he's just looking for new guys to try to go get and then throw them all together and hopefully make a winning team. But the Twins trade Jorge Polanco. They get a top 100 prospect for him. I thought it was a pretty good return on the Twins' part. And then they go out and sign Carlos Santana. What do you think?
Yeah, the Twins are really growing on me. They were kind of a team that a couple of years ago, it was pretty frustrating to see like just the complete lack of offensive talent that they had. And I think that Santana fits their team pretty good. Like I know last year Alex Kirilloff was kind of the first baseman, but he's had continuous injury issues. So given them a pretty steady, Santana can play first base pretty average to above average, and he can give you quality at bats in a lineup that you've got a lot of uncertainty with guys like Kirilloff that have potential injury issues, and that can also mix in at the DH too. Plus he's a switch hitter, so you can pretty much put him in the lineup every day. So I think this is a good move for the Twins, who just continue to kind of build out that lineup. You add in Royce Lewis there if he can stay healthy along with Correa, and they're obviously the favorites. This move for them.
Yeah, it always comes down to the same thing with the Twins is if Buxton stays healthy, He's always going to be their X factor. With a healthy Buxton, that lineup is really good.
He's
Without,
not healthy. He's done.
oh, trust me, I know it. I'm a White Sox fan. I see it all the time. He's never out there, but still, when he is, that lineup is deadly. When he's not, they're going to go win a week AL Central and be maybe make a little bit of noise in the playoffs, but they'll never be true contenders to go win a World Series. They'll always kind of be that, yeah, we'll go win a weak division, keep winning, getting those pennants up there, but they'll never really be able to push the envelope in the AL, I don't think.
Not so fast there. Lewis had a really good postseason. You add in Julian, who's a good young player. Brooks Lee's coming up soon. Like they've got some real pieces there. I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Twins can. Now I think they need one more good starting pitcher, but don't sleep on them next year.
I'm going to sleep on them because I think their starting pitching is going to be terrible. I don't think they're going to be very good at all. I think they're going to make a panicked move at the deadline to try to add to that. I will give the Twins credit. Their farm system is always consistent. They are a very good team at drafting guys and always refilling their farm. You'll never see them up at like a top 10 farm system, top 5. They'll never have that elite farm system, but they're always kind of continually bringing up new guys to kind of keep that MLB roster up afloat and always at the top of the AL Central. So, but on the pitching side, I just don't think they have enough. I think who was the guy they got from in the trade with the Marlins this last year? He pitched really
Pablo
well.
Lopez, yeah, he's their ace.
Yeah,
he's
their
really
ace.
good.
He's their ace. He is good. I think he's going to have a drastic step back this year. I think last year was kind of more of an outlier year for him. I don't think he's going to be nearly as good. His stuff just doesn't wow me. I think he's a good pitcher. I don't think he's a great pitcher, and I think that's kind of what's going to be holding them back is their pitching staff in general.
Yeah, we'll see.
Next, we can let you talk about your team here with the Brewers. We have Rhys Hoskins, Brewers 1-1 player option for a total of $34 million. What do you think?
This is probably my favorite move since the Yelich trade. And I know that a lot of people were like, how do you like him? Because he's a big power bat and they don't think I like power bats. This lineup needed a power bat so bad. And when you kind of like, every time your team gets a guy and then you're kind of mapping out like what the lineup is going to look like. And when you add in Rhys Hoskins into that lineup, it makes it look so much better. Because Sal Frelick in the cleanup spot, as much as I love Sal Frelick, that is just not going to do. So, I'm kind of surprised that the Brewers did this just because they're not really a team that's interested in giving multiple years to guys who are a kind of a question mark. But, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they operate. I'm not sure he's going to be playing first base every day, but now that Santana's gone, I know they have Jake Bauers who can also play first base, but, Hoskins will probably end up flipping between DH and first base, and he'll split the DH time with Yelich and then potentially Contreras on his off days. So it'll be interesting to see how they maneuver the first base DH combo with Hoskins, but he's going to be in the lineup every day, and he's going to be in the 3-4 spot in the batting order. They need the juice in the lineup.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think Rhys Hoskins, like anytime you can add a bat like Rhys Hoskins, you look at your lineup and you're like, all right, we can build around Rhys Hoskins now. I'm not saying the Brewers don't have other talented hitters, but that's a guy you plug into the middle of your order. Every day you're going to see him at the 3 or 4 spot, and now all of a sudden you can look at the rest of the guys in your lineup and be like, oh, okay, these guys look a lot better in the 6 hole. Kind of like you're talking about Sal Frelick. You can kind of move him around now where he's not going to be seeing pitch around counts where, hey, we don't want this guy to get a pitch to hit because we know lower in the lineup we don't have guys to worry about quite as much. Now you have Rhys Hoskins in there and you have Sal Frelick a little bit down. You have to pitch to Rhys Hoskins and you have to pitch to Sal Frelick because otherwise you're either going to swing the lineup back around or you're going to get to a guy like Sal Frelick in more of the 6 hole.
Yeah, the one other thing that I'll say about that too is I know that last year he was injured, but I'm a big believer in being able to have postseason experience. And I know that Hoskins kind of struggled in the playoffs a couple years ago, but he did have some huge hits in that Braves series. I think it's huge to have a guy like that in the lineup because historically Yelich has kind of struggled in the playoffs every time they've gotten there. And most of the rest of their lineup really doesn't have much playoff experience. So I think adding a guy like Hoskins can really help some of those young players in a playoff push. And if they get to the playoffs, having those big at-bats in playoff games.
Yeah, growing up at bats are something that will always be undervalued. I think when you look at MLB talent, you have to have guys that can go up there and take big league at bats. I think you also need to have your fair share of free swingers. I think there's always going to be a balance. You can't have a whole lineup that's going to put together competitive at bats unless you have those big boppers in your lineup. I think you need to have some power at least somewhere where you're kind of viewed as a threat. Singles just don't really win baseball games like they used to anymore. In my opinion, I know you have very differing views, but you have to have guys that can drive balls into gaps and put balls over the wall. Otherwise, you're not going to win very many games. Anything else you have on Rhys Hoskins?
Yeah, just the other thing too is that the Brewers have absolutely been terrible against left-handed pitching the last couple of years, and when you factor in the idea that their lineup is going to feature Yelich and then probably Frelick or Garrett Mitchell, it's very important to add the bat that's right-handed to put in the middle of that lineup against lefties because they have been one of the worst teams against left-handed pitching in baseball the last couple of years.
Yeah, very different from the White Sox who can't hit right-handed pitching, and they go up a ton against a ton of right-handed pitchers. Who would have ever thought that when they were putting the lineup together, huh? Corbin Burnes deal to the Orioles for DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, and the 34th pick. Before we get into the details with Corbin Burnes, what do you think of trading competitive balanced draft picks?
I think it adds a little extra interest because, when you trade draft picks in the other sports, it kind of gives the little extra personality to the team that's getting it. Like they can think about kind of a bigger picture of what it could be. I know that's a lot rather than getting a prospect that you kind of know what you have in a way, but it's a lot more freedom. I think it adds good. Plus, it's just an entertainment product. Baseball lacks some of that entertainment product.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think another thing that gets a little bit undervalued is that your draft pool now grows. So now you get another, especially with the 34th pick, it's going to be probably a little more than $1 million for your signing bonus. And now all of a sudden that gives you more of that draft flexibility where maybe you can go out and get a high-end high school talent in your first round pick and kind of get a safer college guy with the 34th pick, and then you don't look as much of a reach if you really like a guy coming out of high school or that you need to pay to come get on your team. I know the White Sox have done that a lot, at least the last 2 years with Noah Schultz and Colson Montgomery. They go out and they sign these high school guys that they think that they trust a lot. They think that they're going to be able to develop in the system, and they kind of go back and they sign a safer draft class in the second round and the third round, and maybe then their draft class opens up from there. They did it again last year with George Wilcow. He was a later round pick, but they gave him $1 million in the seventh round to come play for them, which if you don't draft accordingly in the early rounds, you can't do. So I think it adds a lot more draft flexibility too. A team like the Orioles to get the 34th pick and that kind of money. Orioles have had very good drafts, as you've seen with their farm system. Like they know how to draft, they know what they're doing. I think that's a very interesting detail that doesn't get talked about enough with that pick is the Brewers getting a guy like that. I apologize. Getting the 34th pick. Now they can go pick a guy that they like that they can develop.
I agree.
All right. Now the Corbin Burnes trade in general. The Brewers get DL Hall and Joey Ortiz, and the Orioles get Corbin Burnes. What do you think? Were you a fan of this when it happened, or what were your initial thoughts, and what are your thoughts now?
As a Brewer fan, I don't really think that I have an emotional connection to Corbin Burnes in a way that most other people do. I've never been a huge Corbin Burnes guy. Obviously, he at one point was the best pitcher in baseball, I think, and I still think he's probably one of the 15 to 20 best starting pitchers, probably 15. But, I always had more of an emotional connection to Brandon Woodruff, which is funny because now both of them are gone. But, Burnes was obviously going through a little timeline. His first year, he was in the bullpen for that NLCS. And obviously I thought he was going to be really good. And then he ended up he was terrible his first year in the rotation. So what he turned into be, was probably more than I could have asked for. But there was something about him that, playoff starts, he just didn't have that bulldog mentality to me. And maybe that's unfair, but, I always felt more comfortable giving the ball to Woodruff in a playoff game than Burnes. And, it kind of annoyed me because he was kind of manipulative to the media a lot. I know that there was a big arbitration case last year, but even the other day he was on Foul Territory.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of throwing digs at the Brewers like that. And it's just the Brewers stuck with him when he had a god awful season. And everybody knew that Brewers weren't going to pay him. That's just not the market that they are. So why are you sour grapes? Because they did trade you now and give you an opportunity, especially to go to a team that won over 100 games last year. Like, you know what? I'm just at the point now where, I was ready for him to go, and I'm glad that they got rid of him. And whether people think they got enough for him, I like both the prospects that they got as well as the pick, but he needed to go now because his value was only dropping.
Yeah, I agree. I'll talk a little bit more about this from the Orioles side of things. I think this was the perfect trade for them. Dylan Cease rightfully had too high of a price for them. I want to throw that in. I do not blame Chris Getz at all for the price he was asking for from the Orioles, but the Orioles give up two guys that are blocked already. I mean, Deal Hall would have been nice. They can live without him. They get Corbin Burnes. Joey Ortiz, I mean, look at the Orioles infield and where the hell is he going to play? There's nowhere, there's no room for him. Another thing I like from the Orioles' perspective is if Corbin Burnes does walk, they get that competitive balance
He's
pick.
not walking. You don't make that trade and let him walk.
I don't disagree, but I think it's important to note that if he does walk, the Orioles still get a pick. Like they're doing this in the event that it does happen, they're prepared where they're getting that other pick back, which I think is important. But I like this trade for the Orioles. I think this puts them to the top of the AL East. I think they are definitely the cream of the crop up there as long as their guys keep developing. And I still think I don't think they're done yet. I think they need some bullpen help. I've heard Michael Kopech has been floated around a little bit. That's a guy that they were thinking about targeting. I think that was more of just my mind wandering about me dreaming about Orioles prospects still because I fell in love with a lot of them and it hurt me to watch Corbin Burnes go to the Orioles. I won't lie, but I like this trade for both sides. I think Joey Ortiz is going to be an absolute stud in Milwaukee. I think he's a very good glove. He's a very good bat. He's just a good all-around baseball player. He has a guy you like, professional at bats. I think that's the big thing. He is professional at bats. He's going to be a good 1, 2, probably more of a two hitter in the lineup eventually over time, or he can be at the bottom of the order and he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to swing it back to the top. I just think he's a good ball player in general. DL Hall, I think he's a pitcher that the Brewers are going to enjoy. They're going to develop him. They're going to get the stuff right. That's what the Brewers do. So, I mean, in return, and then they get the 34th pick that they get to pick someone that they want the best, or they can use the draft class flexibility. I mean, there's tons of options with that pick. But I
Yeah.
think this was a very good trade for both. I think this is a win-win for both sides, a rare win-win trade.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like, so I see a lot of comparisons Hall to Freddie Peralta with the fastball and the way that it works. But, you know, he's left-handed, which I think helps. And I think the Brewers are going to probably give him every opportunity to make the rotation coming out of spring training because, I mean, let's be honest, right now their rotation is Peralta, Wade Miley's your two, and you got some Joel Rosses and Colin Rays, and who knows what's left of Aaron Ashby after his injuries. But giving Hall every opportunity to be in the rotation next year, I think is huge. And then Ortiz is your opening day second baseman next year. If there's one thing we've learned from Matt Arnold this offseason, it's that he doesn't want to run back Bryce Terang at second. They signed Christian Arroyo to a free agent deal, minor league contract. They traded for Oliver Dunn, who was in the Phillies minor league system, who's another middle infield type of bat. And then you throw in that they still got Monasterio there, which he's probably potentially more likely you're opening a third baseman if Tyler Black isn't ready. But Ortiz he's your shortstop of the future because I think Adames probably gets traded at the deadline, but he is your opening day second baseman next year because what we saw of Bryce Terang last year, you can't throw back out there. He's just a pitcher at the plate. So I think that was huge.
No, yeah, and you kind of touched on something that we talked about off air the other day with Willie Adames. I think that that's going to be like that, kind of like that Josh Hader kind of trade where the Brewers are kind of in the thick of things, and outsiders who aren't really familiar with how the Brewers operate and just even how kind of those middle market teams operate are going to be like, why the hell would they trade their starting shortstop? And instead, you look at the team they have. You can move Joey Ortiz over. They have plenty of options at second base, and you probably get a pretty good, at least an okay return for Willie Adames, you would think, especially if they don't plan on re-signing him. And I think that and then you look at that Brewers lineup, and they have a pretty solid young core, I would say, all of a sudden, is now they've really turned it over in the past few years, and they're kind of building towards that future again. I think that's something that the Brewers do very well, being a mid-market team and not spending like a big market team. The White Sox, however, are a big market team. and don't spend, and they don't make good trades as a big market team. So they're just a mess. But we'll touch on them later. But yeah, I think the Brewers are in great shape.
Yeah, the other thing, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Adames because, he's such a streaky guy. He came to Milwaukee, he was really good. Last year, he was awful about halfway through the season. So, it'll be interesting to see if he has another bad start, if they're just going to let it ride with him because, I don't think that Matt Arnold's ever the type of GM to, pass up the opportunity to get some, as we saw with Hader. And I know that they're floating David Williams out there now. They're going to be in front of stuff like this, but if I could see them just hanging on to Adames because they're in a pennant race next year, and the value that he offers with 2 years left, or I'm sorry, with 2 months left. The other thing too is that we got to think about like the way that shortstop contracts are coming out. With
Yeah.
the Swansons last couple of years and the Correas, albeit, and they're both better than Adames. He's going to be commanding a lot of money. So it'll be interesting to see if teams are willing to give up that much for him with the potential that they might not get him back. It might be a 2 month rental.
Yeah, I mean, the teams, I don't think you can think about a team right now that would be interested in him. I think it's going to be a team where maybe their shortstop gets hurt. They're in the thick of a playoff push. They're like, this is the team. We really believe in the team we have. We just need that shortstop piece. And I think that's where they're going to get best value. So I wouldn't say the Brewers are rooting for an injury, but if an injury happens, I think it certainly helps the Brewers out in order to trade Adames. I think that's the only real situation where he's a like top market where they could get something of some substantive value for him.
I agree.
All right, now we'll get into two trades that happened today for the White Sox. Gregory Santos for Prelander Berroa and Zach DeLoach in the 69th pick. Another trade where the picks are involved here. That's kind of why I prefaced it a little bit earlier. Gregory Santos was absolutely disgusting for the White Sox last year in that kind of closer role with Liam Hendricks being out. He did very well in high leverage situations. I thought that he was kind of going to be their closer for the future. They obviously thought otherwise. There's no reason that you trade a reliever like this early with team control unless you don't really think he's going to be a guy for you. I think they sold high. I don't think they had to have thought that what happened that last year was more of a fluke than anything, and they thought they could get the most for him. I also like Prelander Berroa. I think has a very, I wouldn't say similar arsenal, but at worst case, he'll be exactly what Gregory Santos was. Prelander Berroa is a guy who easy 100-mile-an-hour, good slider. I mean, that's exactly what you think of a closer in today's baseball. Like throws gas, good slider. There's your closer. But I think the White Sox are hoping they can develop him into a starting pitcher, and you develop him into a starting pitcher, and now your rotation of the future looks very good. They have some guys that need some more polishing in the minors, but I think they've done a very good job from the deadline to now in getting some guys that they think are they have a ton of high upside arms. If they pan out, it'll be great. If they don't, well, we're going to have one of the nastiest bullpens with no starting pitching you'll ever see. But Zach DeLoach is another guy. He's a little bit of an older outfielder. I saw something on Twitter today that it's like an age rated, it's like a crazy underlying statistic, but he would be the highest one in the White Sox system. Guy puts together professional at bats, probably a fourth outfielder at max, maybe a depth guy. He's not going to be anything special, I don't think. But they needed outfield depth. They really didn't have any outfield prospects I can think of off the top of my head that would come in and be able to help. They have some guys further down the road, but no one that could really kind of step in right now if some guys go down. So he'll be like more of a 4A kind of player for them. And then the 69th pick, which, like I said, the White Sox have drafted really well in recent years. You get the 69th pick. That gives you kind of just that flexibility in your draft signing bonus room to be able to maybe pick a guy a little bit earlier than you want, sign him to a big deal. And the White Sox, I think they're picking 7th or 6th. They're picking high in the draft. They got screwed by the lottery, and then they have, if they're inside the top 10, they can't, like, their pick automatically goes to 10 because they're considered a big market team, which don't even get me started. I think that's the stupidest rule. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I think it should be more based on cap in general instead of where you're at. Like, Reinsdorf isn't going to go out there and spend a ton of money. That's just not who he is, even though we'll get into more of Reinsdorf news a little bit later. But Yeah, so I mean, this trade, I really like it for the White Sox. I think they sold high on Gregory Santos. I trust the new staff there. I think if they saw a few guys that they really wanted, they went out and got them today.
Yeah, you know, at first, my first glance thought about the Santos trade was if you have that many years of control left, why are you trading a guy at this point in time with all the control? Because, I mean, listen, if you're going to trade a relief pitcher, you with that much control, you're probably looking at an overpay at the trade deadline. But I do also understand the idea that they're probably selling high because they see last year as kind of a fluke. So we'll see. My issue with the White Sox, and it still stands, is that, you know, you can talk all you want to about direction per se, but your right fielder is still Gavin Sheets next year.
Don't
And
even get me started on direction.
Grifol and Getz can sit there and talk about how they want to be this athletic team that runs the bases and plays like the Royals because that's pretty well, the Royals of World Series is because that's what they're trying to create. You still are rolling out a lineup with Vaughn, Sheets, and Jimenez every day. Moncada, who's he'll be hurt in 3 games, and then you got two slappies up the middle, and it's just like you got to pick a direction in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on a lot of things there with the White Sox. First off, I don't think Gavin Sheets will be the starting right fielder next year. If he is, it'll be a surprise to me. I think Oscar Colas would be out there. I think it's too early to give up on him. It doesn't make sense to throw out Gavin Sheets instead of Oscar Colas. Hopefully, you find something in Colas. I'd heard something that supposedly Han wanted to sign him to one of those extensions like he did Eloy and Luis Robert. I don't think it was going to be that big or anything, but I heard something that he was like that's how high the White Sox were on Oscar Colas. I think that we'll get into the next guy, or we can talk about it right now. Carlos Mena for Dominic Fletcher. I think Dominic Fletcher is your right fielder for the White Sox next year. He's a lefty bat. He hit really well against right-handers last year. He was, I think, it was only 72 at bats, so a small sample size, but I think he hit like 375, 380. In Arizona, there was no room for him in that outfield. Brian Bannister is a guy who comes from the Arizona system. He knows that system really well. He built that team through the draft. Like they didn't go out and trade super big guys or anything like that besides Goldschmidt, but I don't think any of those guys are even. I know they got Zach Gallen from that, but they have a few guys there. But either way, he built that team through the draft. I think he likes Dominic Fletcher, and I think that's why they went out and trade for him. Because Carlos Mena, I mean, we talked a little bit about it earlier today. He's a guy. He's got, I wouldn't say good stuff, but he has the stuff that could make a MLB caliber starting pitcher, and he's only 21. His velo is down. It's not. He doesn't throw gas or anything. He has pretty good breaking stuff. His command spotty, and I think the White Sox kind of thought they got the most out of him that they could. Time to kind of flip the page. So I think they like Dominic Fletcher. I think they went out and got him, and I think he's their starting right fielder next year.
Yeah, like I said, the whole thing with where I'm at right now with the White Sox is it's less about players and it's more about what you want your team to look like and the culture within the building because, I saw a tweet about, oh, look at how good Moncada and Jimenez look, but it's like, they're going to be hurt in 5 days. Like, at some point here, there's a core who is running out of time to prove that they're going to be consistently decent Major League Baseball players, but they're going to keep throwing them out there again next year. And I know that basically my question is when does Moncada and Jimenez just turn into this is who they are as players? Because, I mean, Jimenez hasn't been consistent and reliable now for three years going on.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I can touch on that a little bit. Moncada pains me the most because when his back is right, he's a really good baseball player. Not enough people see him when he's healthy because he never is. But that back is it lingers so long, and he tries to play through it, which I commend him for because he still has a pretty good glove when he does play through it. But he loses all pop with his bat when his back's not healthy. But his left-handed swing, when his back is good and he's driving the ball, is one of the prettiest things you'll see. I mean, he has a really pretty swing. He has a good eye at the plate. His start last year was very good. He hurts his back and it's over for him. And it just sucks because he has the talent to be a good baseball player. If he can get his back fixed, I think he will be a very productive baseball player. It's his last year. I mean, I think he has a huge option next year. He had a vested option this year. I think he's making $25 million this year because they thought he was going to be an absolute stud. he has the talent to do it. But I mean, this is going to be his last year in Chicago. I don't see how you have tons of guys coming up in your system. Brian Ramos is a guy who I think is going to be their next third baseman that they'll give a shot. But I mean, I don't see a way he comes back to Chicago. I think the only reason he's kind of there right now is because they don't want to eat the money, and no one wants to take on $25 million of Yohan Moncada. Eloy is a completely different story because I've never seen a guy get hurt in so many different ways. It seems like the second he does anything, he finds a way to get hurt. The one that he rolled his ankle and was out a week last year when they were celebrating a walk-off. Or no, it was the Anderson fight where Jose Ramirez, and he twists his ankle and he's out. And it's like just mind-boggling stuff with him. Or spring training a few years ago, he tries to rob a home run and he tears his labrum. And it's just like stupid things with that guy. And it makes no sense. But
I get it. But you know what? The problem that they have, though, is like, everybody ripped on La Russa because but seriously, the way that they operated their team in La Russa's last year was, well, we're just going to play these guys even though they're semi-hurt, and we're not going to play hard, and we're just going to let guys jog all over the place. And it's like, where's the balance between letting guys play and tough through it when they can't play at 100%, but they're not very good? You can't say that you want to be this athletic team that runs the bases and plays really hard, but then you're throwing in half your lineup, and commend them because they're injured and they're fighting through it, but they're not going to be successful that way.
Yeah,
so that's kind of where I'm at now, where it's like you can't trust. Half the guys are injured, the other half are, fat and out of shape, and the other half are first baseman playing the outfield. So it's like it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I saw today was spot on, I thought, with the White Sox. I told you about it, that they're just switching seats on the Titanic this year. They're going down. It's going to be a terrible year to be a White Sox fan. I do think they win more games than Vegas has them at right now. Vegas has them in like 63 games. I think they're closer to a 70-win ball club, but it's going to be ugly. I'm hoping for good development. I have a feeling I'm going to be watching a lot of minor league White Sox baseball compared to Major League White Sox baseball this year. Kind of find the pitchers that I want to watch, but I'm going to gut through it. Hopefully we're a little bit better next year. If we can just kind of show that scrappiness that we kind of talked about there, where Grifol wants guys to go out there and be just dogs on the baseball field, that would make me happy, because I haven't seen a team that looks like they want to play baseball in so long. I just want to see guys that enjoy being out there. Even if they're getting their butts whooped, I don't want to see them smiling on the bench or anything, but I want to see guys that are like trying to win actively all the time, that want to win. Even if they're not going to, I at least want to see some want from some people. But then, good news from the White Sox. They're building a new stadium. I think this stadium, if they can do this, Jerry's trying to beat death. Death's knocking on the door. They're trying to get him out. Death's trying to take him out of there. They're trying to build a new stadium, sell the team, get rid of it, because none of his kids want it. They're going to sell a team. Hopefully they get a brand new stadium. It's right on the river. It looks, the graphics look really nice of it so far, the mock-ups that I've seen. I think this is ideal. I don't hate guaranteed rate stadium, but man, a new stadium, you can never beat it. They haven't even left the lot there since Comiskey is right next to guaranteed rate, so they haven't been in a good part for a little bit now, but you get a premium spot right in the city. I think that's ideal.
Yeah, well, the best part of that would be Jerry selling the team, because like you said, that's about the good news with that.
Yep, Jerry sells the team, and I think, who am I talking about? The next guy will probably be some cheapskate too, probably move the team to Nashville. But no, that's the other thing. Them building this stadium means they're staying, which let's hurry up and get that paperwork signed, because I don't want to see the White Sox leave. Well, anything else you have to add today?
Nope, I don't think so.
All right, we have some pretty good stuff planned here. Like I said, we're going to be coming out with new episodes released every Sunday. If anything changes, please check the Twitter. We'll be updating everything through there. We appreciate everyone watching, and we'll see you guys next week.